I have had a chance to get to know Professor Bartkus over the last couple of days, and I think you're in for a real treat. She's had a really interesting and varied career. She spent a decade in management consulting with McKinsey and Company, becoming a partner there. She has been an academic, primarily at the University of Notre Dame, where she has founded the Meyer Business on the Front Lines program, which is a program dedicated to helping to harness the great power of business to help society, and particularly places that have had conflict and poverty, to overcome some of those challenges by helping people have the dignity of a job and of work. She's really interested in the hardest hit parts of the world, the places where people are struggling the very most. And she and I both agree that one of the only ways to help societies that have deep poverty and deep cycles of violence and division to grow and overcome those things is by harnessing the power of the economy to really create sustainable development over time. She has worked with the U.S. Special Forces in West Africa and Central America. She's traveled all over the world, doing really interesting things in really challenging environments, often with students. She's deeply committed to her Catholic faith. She works very actively with the Catholic Relief Services, which is one of the largest humanitarian organizations in the world. She was a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford University. She holds bachelor's and master's degrees in economics from Yale University. And she has just recently written a book with her co-author Emily Block at the University of Alberta, which I recommend to you. It's called Business on the Edge: How to Turn a Profit and Improve Lives in the World's Toughest Places. And if you would like to read that book after hearing this talk today, all you need to do is go into the Kennedy Center main office and give us your name and your email address, and we will order a book free of charge for you to pick up by the end of the semester. And I can tell you that it is a really compelling read. It's got amazing stories, and one of the most important lessons that I've taken from my reading of the book is that one of the easiest ways, it's not easy, but one of the easiest ways to actually solve conflict is by giving people jobs and figuring out what's in it for businesses as well as societies is going to be the subject of our talk today. We will go in kind of a back and forth discussion style format. Professor Bartkus is a very engaging teacher and lecturer, so be prepared to share your thoughts and participate. We will also have a more formal Q&A session at the end of our time together. We'll make sure you get out of here by 1 o'clock. If you need to leave for any classes before 1, you're also welcome to leave as we enter that Q&A session. Please join me in welcoming Professor Bartkus to BYU.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Oh, goodness. You don't want me to benchmark you guys against my Notre Dame undergraduates at 8:30. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm so thrilled to be at the Kennedy Center, and I'd like to get to know you all a little bit before we have our conversation around, can business really be a force for good here? So I'm going to point on the map where my family's from and where I've been most recently, and I'll say I'm Viva. I'm from Lithuania, which is just north of Poland and across the Baltic Sea from Sweden. And then you'll go next and tell me what's the most recent international country you've been in. So give me your name and where on the map.
My name's Kara. I just took a trip alone to Switzerland.
Terrific.
My name's Kayla, and I haven't gone anywhere internationally yet.
Well, then why don't you tell me where your daydream is, where you'd like to go?
Well, I'm going to Morocco.
You're going to Morocco. Oh, that's terrific.
I'm Liza, and I went to Prague last summer.
Exciting.
I'm Noemi, and I went to El Salvador.
Terrific. We're going to be talking about Guatemala, just across the border.
I'm Kimberly. Last year I went on a study abroad, so I guess the last place we went to was Mexico.
Terrific.
I'm Maddie. The last place I went was London, so England.
I'm Stuart. Last place I was in was Geneva, Switzerland.
I'm Tyler. I got back from Nicaragua.
I'm Aiden. I was in Italy last.
I'm Jacob. I just got back from Israel yesterday.
Oh,
I'm Vanessa. I'm going to Ecuador in May.
terrific.
I'm Lily, and I went to Mexico City.
Neil Millman, geographer, world traveler. I've been to 70 countries. My most recent one, though, the last one was Lithuania.
Terrific.
90, and I'll just say that was the day I almost got beaten to death, but I love Lithuania anyway.
Terrific.
My name's Addie, and I just went on a study abroad to South Korea.
My name's Tala, and I just came back from New Zealand.
And we missed you.
Yeah, my name is Micaela, and I went to Mexico.
Terrific. Go ahead.
I'm Emily, and I was just in the UK.
I'm Emma, and I was in Morocco.
I'm Reeve, and I just was in Costa Rica.
Terrific. Terrific. So let me lay out what we're going to be doing today. The first question is, who had a banana this morning? Terrific. We are going to follow the entire value chain. This is the banana I would have eaten this morning, but I needed a prop for us to start. And so we are going to address this question as a way of addressing this question. Can business be a force for good, particularly in the toughest places in the world? And the way we're going to do this is we're going to go to Guatemala. For those of you who've just been to Mexico or El Salvador and the like, we're going to head to Guatemala, but not the Guatemala of, shiny new malls and hard rock cafes and the new shiny airport, or the beautiful colonial city of Antigua. Instead, we're going to go 200 miles north of Guatemala City into the dry corridor, where the poverty and malnutrition is very, very high. It has some of the highest poverty rate in the Western Hemisphere. And just to give you a feel for what this place is like, I stopped counting openly displayed guns at 50 by 10 a.m. on my first morning. So imagine this. There are 10 times the amount of guns held in Guatemala in private hands than there is in the military or in the police. So you can imagine who that is, right? Who do you think are the private individuals who are holding these guns? I forget your name, but you just came back from El Salvador.
Noemi.
Noemi. So what do you think, Noemi?
Probably just from people trying to protect their families.
Stuart, what would you say?
That's a good question. I'd probably agree also potentially like cartels.
These are the narco traffickers. So actually, most Guatemalans don't have guns. When they say they're in private hands, it's essentially the narco traffickers. And you can see this particularly if you look at the map. I'm just going to walk over here and show you a few things. Most of the coca growing for cocaine, of course, comes from Colombia, as you know. Trade patterns for decades have always been across the Caribbean Sea going into Florida. But what the U.S. Navy has done is an extraordinarily good job of interdiction, which essentially means they have guys, coming off of aircraft carriers in helicopters, hanging down with guns and making sure that the narco traffickers' boats don't go up this way or go up this way. So essentially the narco traffickers have created a superhighway across Central America, across Guatemala, and they're essentially trying to make it to Mexico so that the Sinaloa cartel and others can pick up the drugs and take them into the United States. So if you can see this, if you're going through Nicaragua, Honduras, the dry corridor, this is where a lot of the narco trafficking comes through. So far, so good? Yeah, so this is where we were working. This is where the narco traffickers live. This is how everyone else lives in this part of the world. I was with Catholic Relief Services as well at this time, which is a large humanitarian organization. We really care about children. We really care about malnutrition. You can see this everywhere across Zacapa up in the north. So you can take a tape measure, and if the tape measure goes around, say, the upper arm of a 10-year-old, and it's too small, like this, that's the easiest way to test for malnutrition. You can also see it through listlessness. You can see it through hair, a number of other ways. But because of the deep poverty here, there is a high degree of malnutrition. So we were invited by the Archbishop of Zacapa. We run a program at the University of Notre Dame that partners with local communities and local organizations, essentially to build businesses and markets so that people can have the dignity of work. I'm not going to give you anything in Guatemala. I'm going to create opportunities. You have to do the hard work to lift your family out of poverty. But most people would take that deal any day rather than charity because they want the dignity of work and they want to be able to look after their families. So the Archbishop of Zacapa, his name was Monsignor Rosalino, and there was a campesina leader, Flor. They essentially created a coffee cooperative here. And let me just describe a little bit Archbishop of Zacapa. He's a tall man, closely cropped, grizzled hair. You've probably seen Catholic bishops or archbishops. They love their big gold cross. He had a wooden one. And when I shook his hand was worn, like with calluses, which essentially told me he probably works the fields with his parishioners. Flor and other campesinos launched this cooperative, and they had already sold their first container of coffee to Green Mountain Coffee, a great achievement. And what the Archbishop asked us to do is to come and partner with them to figure out if they could expand into the banana business. Now, that's not as crazy an idea because coffee is about this high, coffee shrubs, and it requires shade. Banana trees, banana plants are very high and they have these big leaves and they can provide shade. And it turns out their roots don't fight each other. So they can both be in the same soil. So it's not that bad of an idea. And when the Archbishop sent our team off with a blessing, what he said, this is the Todos Hermanos is the coffee cooperative. What he said is, walk in the footsteps of the campesinos. Not to learn of their hardships, but rather their dreams. This is the blessing he sent us off on. And that's what we tried to do. Essentially, we saw their hardships, but we saw their dreams too. And we started working the problem, because in the end, if bananas are going to work, you're going to have to make a profit. The economics have to work. So there's our student team. You can see here, we're walking in the footsteps of the campesinos. This is the coffee. Those are the banana plants. We spent a fair amount of time learning about how these two crops grow together. And we spent a lot of time breaking bread with local communities, because how are you going to actually figure out stuff if you don't really spend time with them and listened to their stories. They were incredibly generous and warm and welcoming. You can have a great Excel spreadsheet that says, hey, if you have this yield and you get this price, it'll be this profitable. But Zacapa, remember, is the northern quarter and it's mountainous. It has to be a certain amount of mountainous just to grow coffee because you need a certain altitude and weather and climate. But if you have a mountainous region and you're growing bananas, you have to actually get them down the mountain, right? So we also helped carry the banana bunches down. And that, of course, made us change all of our assumptions in our Excel spreadsheets and our business models because, it's one, very difficult to do. Two, you bruise a bunch of bananas and you can't actually sell them for the prices that you thought you were going to. But we followed the whole value chain, shipping the bananas all the way to local markets and to national markets. And we even got fancy and said, oh, wow, maybe we can even process bananas, dry them out, make banana chips, do something with plantains, make a little bit of extra money, right? At this point, we're thinking, oh, goodness, maybe we can really do something with this business. Maybe we can really help the agricultural cooperative expand into another product and earn a little bit more money for the campesinos. So what are we missing in this equation? You who said this beautiful prayer, what do you think we're missing in this equation?
I'm just thinking about the profit, not necessarily the people that are doing it.
Well, in the end, the only way this is going to be sustainable and self-perpetuating is if we actually sell it at a price that is above what it costs us to get it to these markets, and that the customers want to buy this. So what are we missing in this equation? Let's say you go to Chipotle, but Chipotle is like, 8 blocks away, and Chick-fil-A is only 3 blocks away. What's going to happen?
You go to Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, you're going to take a look at the competition. What are the substitutes for your lunch? And figure out which one you're going to go with, right? So what's missing in this equation thus far is the competition. So we're feeling pretty good at this point until we run into the competition. This is the Dole plantation just at the bottom of the mountain. I'll give you one guess who is the largest individual landowner in all of Guatemala. Do you think it's a Guatemalan? No. Who do you think it is? Dole. Dole. So Dole has decided that the way they're going to work in very tough places that are isolated, impoverished, frequently fairly lawless, is they're going to try to reduce all of their vulnerabilities by controlling everything. They're going to put the money down up front. They're going to buy the land. They're going to take care of the entire value chain. They're going to take care of the shipping, the transportation, the boats, everything. That is a very, very heavy upfront investment. It also doesn't necessarily protect you, in our experience working in many of these places. Because essentially, if a mob comes, there's no way you can build a wall high enough to protect this. Because if the mob comes, they're going to take your plantation. If the mob comes, they're going to take your mine. What we have found over time is the way to really work in these places in terms of having a return on investment and really thinking about safety and security is to have your business so deeply embedded in the local community that the local community perceives your success and their success as the same. And that they protect the enterprise, they protect the business. So the opposite of what Dole is doing is what Green Mountain Coffee did with this campesino cooperative. They provided support, they partner with microfinance, they partner with NGOs to do training, but they essentially buy from local small small farmers and from cooperatives, so that you don't own the whole value chain, you don't own the whole land, but you're making targeted investments to the small farmers so that they build up the strength and resilience to look after your community. That being said, do you think our farmers are going to be able to compete with this? Look at this. This is us walking down the mountain. This is one of my students. This is their plantation. Let's say you're a customer in Antigua or Guatemala City or even in Zacapa, and you look at the banana that she and I have carried down the mountain. What do you think that's going to look like? It's going to be pretty bruised, right? Or you can go look at the Dole banana. There's no way to be profitable here. There's no way. Basically because of the mountainous environment, the transportation and the like. So we thought, oh my goodness, we've really done a good service for the Archbishop, right? He would have probably tried to do some convoluted way of making the bananas work when they're not going to be profitable. So we at least gave him the information to say, hey, look, don't go down this path because there's no way. So we thought, oh wow, this is going to be a contribution, at least not doing something that's not going to be economically viable. So we're sitting with the cooperative general manager, and he says, well, then we're going to go bankrupt. We have 6 weeks of cash left. Then we're going to go bankrupt. We're going to have to close. And we're sitting there going, but you just did an entire shipment of coffee to Green Mountain Coffee. How is this possible? And he's like, well, there's no banks here in Zacapa, right? You know, we had to take a loan to get fertilizer to grow the coffee, right? Who do you think we borrowed from? You know, the local loan sharks, right? Now we have very high interest rates. We're taking another loan just to pay down the first loan. And we're, you know, essentially behind our payments. And we're going to have to close the cooperative because we're going to run out of cash. So our team came back and said, we have to keep problem solving this because what's going to happen if the cooperative closes? What's going to happen to the 400 campesino families? What do you think? What do you think is going to happen to the 400 campesino families?
They lose their jobs.
They lose their source of income. And then what happens?
Back to looking.
And then what happens? What's the big threat here in this geography? Yep.
Narco traffic. Right.
Yeah, and what happens to their kids?
Starve. They starve and the cycle repeats.
More malnutrition, right? So they have to send one of their kids down the mountain to work in Guatemala City, or they come as illegal immigrants to the United States. I mean, in the end, parents are going to feed their kids. They're going to do whatever it takes to feed their kids. So yeah, in the end, why did the Archbishop ask us about bananas? Does he care about bananas? Why not? Go ahead.
The citizens in their area, that they're well fed and that they're doing well.
Yeah, exactly. In the end, it's just a means to an end, and the end is the children's welfare. So we went back to basics, and we were like, there's no way to make bananas profitable. What do the campesinos do now? Well, we went back to the asset that they have. They do grow coffee, and they have a coffee processing plant. So there's a lot of steps to go from the coffee cherry to the coffee bean to something that gets shipped to the United States. And they only grow enough coffee to use this equipment about 1 month a year. They just haven't grown enough coffee yet. So our thought, and remember, this is a valley that grows coffee. Zacapa is a great Arabica coffee. So we're looking around the valley, and we see all of these drying places. So what's your first thought? There's a whole bunch of people drying coffee in the valley. You've got the processing plant. What do you think you should do?
For them?
Rent it to them, right? Exactly. So we're thinking, oh, in our business terms, we're like, we're going to monetize an asset. We're going to rent it out to the neighbors. And then one of the campesinos that we've gotten very close to kind of whispers to us, who do you think the neighbors are? Who do you think the neighbors are? Go ahead.
Bartkus.
Yeah, and what are they doing with the coffee?
I don't know.
Come on, play the role of the narco trafficker. You can do it. I believe in you.
Are they shipping it with their drugs, cocaine, narcotics?
It's even more sophisticated than that. Coffee is a commodity. It's basically a commodity. So what they're doing is they are laundering their illicit gains, their illicit dollars, by paying a bunch of farmers for their coffee. They take the coffee, they process it, and then they ship it essentially to Starbucks or Green Mountain Coffee or anyone like that. I mean, this is the way these supply chains work. So now how do you think about the idea of renting your equipment to the neighbors? Go ahead, you're smiling.
You wouldn't want to do that.
You wouldn't want to do it. Tell me why.
Because you're just, you're making them do more of that. It's like competition with the actual farmers.
Mm-hmm. But you could make some money from renting. Go ahead.
Well, if you're renting to your neighbors and they're narcos, then it's gonna you're kind of becoming more liable to like more danger, because if they're in it and let's say you have like a contract with them and you don't accomplish it or you don't meet their needs, you're gonna be in danger and your family's gonna be in danger and anybody else that you have connected.
Yeah. Have you guys seen the movie The Godfather?
Yeah.
Right? You know, then the horse's head is in your bed, right? You get into bed with them and it's hard to get out. Someone give me the opposite argument. Go ahead, back there.
That would be way more lucrative. You'd make so much more money so much quicker.
To do what?
Partner up with the narcotic dealers.
I'm not partnering them. All I'm doing is I'm renting my equipment to process their coffee. Give me the argument why you might do that. Go ahead.
You can stay in business and these 400 families.
So you stay in business, and what does staying in business mean to you? What does staying in business mean to you?
They get to keep your employees, and they get to keep.
Not just employees. Why? What? Okay, come on.
To feed more.
What do your parents care about you when you're little?
Food.
Yeah, they're going to look after you.
Yeah.
It's a way of earning a little bit more income. So you can buy a little bit more food, maybe reduce the stunting and malnutrition. So here's what we really learned here. All of us have essentially won the demographic lottery because we were born in the United States. You don't think these Guatemalan campesinos aren't also ridiculously smart, ridiculously hardworking, ridiculously aspirational? Absolutely. In the end, we are not the ones to judge. I don't care if you're from BYU or you're from Notre Dame or if you're from any other place. At best, you can present options. And those folks that live in isolated, impoverished, frequently fairly lawless places that are kind of in the gray, they have to make the decisions themselves. So what do you think happened? What do you think happened? Why?
Because they care about their children.
Yeah.
It's their most important.
So the Archbishop went through an entire discernment process with the campesinos in the cooperative. And in the end, it didn't take them that much time to decide. It didn't take them that much to decide. Fast forward a number of years later, the coffee cooperative survives. It gets essentially pulled into the Guatemalan National Coffee Cooperative, which is essentially like you used to be on a JV team and now you're playing in the majors. These communities in Zacapa have essentially made it through their hard work to the bottom rung of the development ladder through these efforts, which is great. Now they can sell more, they buy more fertilizer, they grow more, and they go through an entire process. So that's what ended up happening to the campesinos in Zacapa. Now, what did I learn? A couple of things. First of all, every community, I don't care where you are on the planet, has something to offer. It could be capabilities, it could be resources, it could be their discipline and hard work. There's some sort of competitive advantage. The second thing I learned is that the only way this works on a long-term basis is you have to embed these businesses very deeply in the local communities. They have to do the hard work. They have to lift themselves out of poverty. You have to be part of that process. But you can't come from the outside and say, I'm here to help. You can't do that. That is just condescending, patronizing, sounds like Americans. We're here to help. No, you're here to serve or you're here to learn. They know more about their opportunities and they know more about their territories than you will ever learn. So what we've now essentially taken on at the University of Notre Dame is a process of accompaniment. We will serve, we will build businesses and markets, but we will essentially walk alongside folks. I mean, we'll do troubleshooting, we'll get them access to resources, we may connect them to customers and markets, but it's one of accompaniment. And for me personally, I mean, honestly, I didn't think I was that arrogant. I had just retired as being a partner from McKinsey and Company. I had literally just written the book on problem solving. I thought I'd get to Guatemala, you know, our team would do the problem solving and the like. Nope, what I learned very much is a sense of humility. And I learned it basically from the Archbishop. When he said, walk in the footsteps of the campesinos, I think the Holy Spirit was working through him to tell me that I had to learn from the campesinos. I couldn't come in with my like hot shot, you know, I'm a partner, I can do this problem solving. That we had to do it together. And since that time, over the last 15 years or so, that's the spirit in which we've worked together. So these are the lessons learned. Now, what I want to show you is this is the way to work in all the isolated, impoverished, lawless, fragmented places. So if you look at foreign direct investment over the last 20 years, this is why you have research assistants at the University of Notre Dame. They are low cost and they can do all of this data gathering for you. So foreign direct investment has essentially, everyone knows it's gone into China, India. But what's really interesting, that a big chunk of it has gone into lots of countries in the world, but only within about 100 miles of an international airport. I think this is because European business leaders, American business leaders don't want to bump around on bad roads longer than a couple hours. And so essentially this is where investment has gone. Yellow is everything that's left. And this, with global warming, is where a lot of agriculture is going to go. This is where there's a lot of raw materials and a lot of low-cost labor. This is going to be the next wave of economic opportunity. And because I have wonderful research assistants, we also essentially did the analysis from the ground up, country by country, to figure out the population and the annual economic activity in the yellow places. Now, given the planet only has $130 trillion of annual economic activity, this is not going to get overlooked for that much longer. And so I leave you with the main lessons here, which is you can learn from everyone. And if you are going to be successful in working in these places, you're going to have to collaborate from beginning to end with the local communities, the local organizations, the local actors. So where might your banana have come from? It might have come from Dole, or it might have come from a number of the supply chains that I've taught you about. So what are your reactions now? I would love to be able to take questions. Mm-hmm.
In your travels, especially in Central America, like Guatemala, how did you see the impact of the government affecting these low?
So in many of the places that are essentially yellow, what you have is the absence of government. So you have the absence of normal rule of law, and you have the absence of services like education and healthcare that governments provide. What you have to do is you have to map who are the local actors in a particular area and figure out, understand their motives and understand who you might have some common ground with in work, and some places not. But I'm telling you, in 20 years, I've interacted with government very little, because in the places that very little. Next question. Yeah, please.
I guess when looking at those local actors, how do you know where to work? How do you know?
So there's two parts to that question. The question is, how do you know where to work? So first of all, we as a program at the University of Notre Dame have to be invited in by a local partner that is willing to be open-minded, take new, action-oriented, take new and different ideas, right? In the end, we have a list of more partners than we have the capacity to take on. So there's more good organizations, more NGOs, more Catholic Church, the Aga Khan Foundation in Central Asia, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints Humanitarian Services in the Pacific. We work with all of these organizations. But they have to be action-oriented. They have to have similar aspirations to us. We screen them, and when we take them on, we never take them on for less than 3 years. Mainly because you can't move the needle in less than 3 years. You have to dig in and work the problem that way. So that's how I think about our local partners. Everyone comes home safely. So the local partners, we don't take care of our own safety and security. The local partner has forgotten more about the local situation than we will ever learn. So if the local partner in Colombia says, hey, look, this is looking a little unstable, maybe you guys shouldn't come down, then we don't, because they're the ones who are taking care of our safety and security. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How do you stay safe when you are in the area?
The local partner essentially looks after us. There's no way to do this as, a bunch of outsiders dropping into Colombia or dropping into Guatemala. We have failed an enormous amount. Like out of 90 projects, half of them have failed, hands down. We look for action-oriented partners, and we take risk. We take intellectual risk. We're learning more. We're taking on new and different types of problems. We just started working in Central Asia 3 years ago with the Aga Khan Foundation, the largest Islamic humanitarian organization in the world. Did our first project go there as well as I would have wanted? Probably not, because we were getting to know the partner and we were getting to know the geography. But they have to take care of that. We can't. We just don't know enough. Now, unless it's a level 4 State Department, warning, pretty much everywhere else we can work. So as you can see, not Mali, not Afghanistan, not Central African Republic, not Ukraine. We don't work where there's sanctions, so not Russia, not North Korea. Mm-hmm.
Where have you personally gone in out of all of these places?
Oh, a lot, many of these places.
Do you go on every project?
Well, I can't anymore because we might have, 5, 6, 7 projects at a particular time. So what we have is our alumni from the program essentially take vacation time from McKinsey or Goldman Sachs or UBS, and they are the coaches for the teams. I make sure the quality control for the partner is there, but the people on the ground are our own alumni of the program. And at the beginning, we did education projects, we did healthcare projects, we said yes to anyone because we were just starting. We are really, really focused on business and markets because that's the only place we're good at. We come from the Mendoza School of Business, and we find over time we just don't have capabilities to take on anything outside of our sweet spot of, business problem solving. But, even with 50% failure rate, we've still created over 30,000 jobs around the world. So you think every job has a family of 5, you scale up that from there pretty quickly.
Have you ever had a place that you visited where maybe they don't want an expansion? Distance is enough. They just want to provide for their families. They're not thinking of going big.
I think there's a lot of communities, particularly those that are very close to the land. So I think about the indigenous on the Amazon. I think about communities in parts of Colombia, or the Mayan Quiche people in Guatemala. I don't think they have the same sort of growth needs that maybe American business has. But they need to make more than $1.90 a day. So we're working on those poorest places. So even deep in Brazil, in the Amazon, you're barely being able to feed your kids. And part of your responsibility in the Amazon is to protect the forest. Because Brazil can't pay for enough park rangers, essentially, national park rangers. So we want to build up the resilience of those communities so that they can have some extra time rather than fishing and farming all the time, so they can do vigilance against the illegal mining, illegal logging, illegal fishing in the Amazon. Or the Quiche people. They would love to bring their cacao and their chocolate to the world. That's pride. They don't need a big business like Mars or any of the big chocolatiers, but there's pride in bringing their resource to the world. So we usually find some common ground there.
Is there something that we as students, either getting ready to graduate or still looking forward to graduation, is there something that we can do to help in these types of situations? Or
I think you can be an informed consumer. And I think you can be an informed citizen of the world, right? That how we as Americans buy becomes really important in these types of places. So you can do some research and think about, okay, I like how this company is doing its supply chain, and you don't need to do it for everything. Do it for your favorite product. Maybe it's shoes, maybe it's chocolate, whatever it is. That's a really big step. And then educate yourselves enough, right, to participate in civic society. There will be NGOs that will need your assistance. There will be elections that you should participate in. This is your country and your future. I'm trying to give you a way of thinking about it. Please.
Just building on this question, I liked a lot of your discussion about accompaniment and the way in which we can learn from partnering with folks about their contexts and all the things that we have a hard time knowing. What do you feel your side of the partnership contributes meaningfully with those that you spend 3 years with? What do you do that they can't do as well? And for those in the audience who want to do that, what should they be learning to be able to go out and do this kind of work specifically?
So I think in our experience, we bring three things. One is we have a fundamental understanding of how business works, how economies work. There are a lot of very hardworking communities and very hardworking NGOs. My own Catholic Relief Services that I was on the board with for 7 years did not have a business bone in their body. And it's very disheartening to see my own organization do project after project without thinking about the sustainability. And so we created training programs for our staff at Catholic Relief Services so that they could start understanding a little bit and discerning which projects might lead to some sort of sustainable initiative versus not. Catholic Relief Services loves increasing yield, loves doing agricultural technical work. If I increase yield for a product that there's no market for, I don't care if I've gotten USAID money or money from the Brits, the Aussies, the Norwegians, it doesn't do any good in the long term. So one is you have to have a basic understanding of how money flows through a society. It is one of the life vessels, right? So we bring that because there's like even our Colombian partner is a conflict transformation partner. We bring the business. Our Brazilian partner is a bunch of botanists and biologists that are saving all of the nearly extinct animals and fish in the Amazon. We bring the business. We make the forest worth more standing up than cut down. So I think that's the first thing that they can't do themselves. I think the second thing that we do is in coming from the United States and in having a rigorous process, we inevitably stumble on resources that may help them along the way. So many of these places are very resource constrained. You only need just a little bit to get them going. And sometimes we're able to connect them to that. We absolutely connect them to markets and customers. So that's sort of the way that we work. And, you know, Aga Khan Foundation, for example, is a remarkable, remarkable organization in Central Asia. I mean, they drive everywhere. It's the only NGO I've worked with that has diplomatic plates. They don't bring the business. And we help them on that. And then they take those ideas and they have the power of implementation and the power of their professional staff and their connections in the community. And then they run with those ideas. So, for example, 2 years ago, the priority was, no kidding around, Kyrgyzstan essentially had to absorb 50,000 Russian refugees. We essentially helped them build the IT businesses so that those guys can be productive in the Kyrgyz society. That was their priority. They were deer in headlights. They're like, come help us. We're like, we're right there. So I think that's what we bring.
That's great. Just to carry on to your answer right now, organized crime aside, the biggest economy in the developing world is the black market. People are in the black market to avoid red tape and exploitation and so on. But it's within there's an economist named Pizarro who examined this, whatever. He pointed out that in the black market economy, there's great social capital and human capital. And that's what you try to find. You try to put people who are trying to solve local problems and issues without getting involved in crime or bureaucratic rigmarole, right? And so that's part of the solution. It's not the perfect solution.
I don't think we've ever worked in a formal economy in all of these places. It's all informal. You know, and the way that we have essentially figured out this number is by tracking electricity usage outside of the formal economy to try to figure out how much economic activity there are in isolated, impoverished places. That's the backbone of this analysis. Sure, I would love to bring the Guatemalan campesinos into the formal economy. It took 3 years of work to get them to the bottom rung of Jeff Sachs's economic development ladder, right? They had to pass through the grayness of renting their equipment until they grew enough coffee at enough of a quality so that the national cooperative could absorb them. That's what it takes. But you have to build businesses that make money, because if not, you're just waiting for the next grant or the next charity or the next donation. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. I'm just telling you. That's not going to work. Mm-hmm.
We have time for one more question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, if this is over, we can talk about it later. I was just wondering if you could, since I missed, just briefly summarize like what exactly your background is.
My background. Well, I'm Lithuanian. Did you get that part? My PhD was on wars of independence. I spent 4 years of my life traipsing around with guerrillas and insurgents to try to figure out why communities essentially take up arms to fight for self-determination. The reason for that is I am so old. I was doing my PhD when Lithuania was gaining its independence from the Soviet Union. I know that's like ancient history for you guys. And my PhD supervisor, I just wanted to write about Lithuania. And my PhD supervisor sat me down and said, Viva. He said this in an English accent. I can't do his accent. The world does not need a dissertation on how great the Lithuanians are. You're going to fail. Go away. Go figure out something else. So I studied everyone else's self-determination aspirations. And so, Kurdistan, Eritrea, Southern Sudan, the Karen and Kachin in Burma, the Moros in the Philippines, East Timor. And then I graduated and had to get a real job. And so I went to McKinsey for 10 years and was a partner of the firm the last 4. And then I went back to my first love of teaching and mentoring, and I've been at the University of Notre Dame for the last 20 years. I served for 7 years on the board of Catholic Relief Services, which was such a blessing because Catholic Relief Services looked after my parents in refugee camps in Austria and Germany after World War II. And when Truman lifted the immigration ban, sponsored them to come to the United States. And then along the way, I also spent 4 years deploying with U.S. Special Forces in West Africa and in Central America with the U.S. Army Special Operations Command, because no one loves peace more than a soldier. And if you look at this jigsaw puzzle in these places, you need business, you need the local community, and over time, you have to build some amount of security. The community can build governance, but sometimes you need just a little additional help on the security, and we bring the business. So that's what we did in West Africa and in Central America, and so I was part of the team that helped write the doctrine for conflict prevention with the U.S. Army Special Operations Command, so it's a little bit different types of experiences. I love the front lines. I love how people work so hard and aspire to create a little bit better lives for their children. I want to serve those most vulnerable with the skills that we have. And fortunately, under the umbrella of the University of Notre Dame, we are able to do that type of work. So hopefully that helps. I have to put this up because my publisher says all the time, she didn't pay me to write a book, she pays me to do sales and marketing for a book. So I have to put that up.